So just so everybody can get a sense of who is here in our virtual room, we're going to ask that you let people know your name, where you're from, your role, and if you're comfortable, your email contact, just in case people are interested in contacting with each other, and one thing you hope to get out of the webinar. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes to enter that information in the chat. Okay. Great to see representation from different places in our province.
Judy from Calgary. We've got Sandra from Wainwright, Astrid from the Sylvan Lake, the other beautiful lake in our province, Lori Moore from YMCA, Nadine from Athabasca, Jessica from Lac La Biche, Tegan from Edmonton. Welcome, Tracy from Strathcona County.
Okay. If you haven't had a chance to put your information in, then you can just continue to add, and we can kind of keep seeing who is putting their info in here. Okay, so again, great to see people from all over.
Our hope with our cohort is to engage folks from across the province, whether you're in a bigger city center or whether you're in a small rural community, and so that we can start making some mentoring partnerships to help with the mentoring work that's going on in your area. Our agenda for today is actually quite simple. We're going to talk about the elements of quality team mentoring, some tips and tricks for you. Get a sense of what's already taking place. We're going to spend some time in some breakout rooms where you can do some group sharing. Caroline is going to take us on a resource tour of the AMP site. Andy has been spending an awful lot of time with behind the scenes, and then with Al's support to update our website. So we'll take you on a tour of that. And then we'll have a quick little wrap up with some next steps.
And I think the resources that we're going to focus on today are those ones that are directly related to team mentoring, with information that kind of supports some of the elements and tips that we'll be talking about. Oh, I'm having some trouble advancing this. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. There we go. Oops, now I'm going all over the place. So there were some people who weren't as familiar with this collaborative community network around team mentoring. So AMP was really fortunate to receive a grant from a private foundation, and one of the I guess areas that they fund is adolescent mental health and well-being. So they understand that teen mentoring is beneficial to our adolescent well-being. And so what they really wanted to see was an increase in teen mentoring happening across the province. In schools, but also in organizations or organizations that support schools or whatever that looks like. So that was really the impetus behind starting this collaborative community network. And so what's been happening and what will continue to happen is initially we were fortunate enough to be able to do some face-to-face workshops and get-togethers, which were of course wonderful. Now we've had to kind of switch to having virtual webinars. Some are provincial, some we split into a north and a south cohort, although it doesn't really matter which one you go to. If you can't go, if you live in northern Alberta and you can't get to that one, you can go to the southern one. So don't be worried about that. And we are hoping to get to in-person sessions soon. So we have some workshops scheduled for that closer to the end of the school year, and we are really hoping that those ones will be able to be in person. And just for people who are unfamiliar, excuse me, with AMP, AMP does not provide direct mentoring. Rather, AMP's role is to support mentoring and other youth-serving organizations in the province to provide quality mentoring or youth support for youth. So essentially that's by holding things like webinars, creating and making resources accessible, all of those kinds of different ways to support. And also really AMP is really open to hearing from partners and other interested people about maybe what they would like to see. Also looking at kind of where are the gaps, what could we be doing differently or better to support organizations. So again, please feel free to provide us with feedback. Vision, young people thrive through mentoring relationships. And really the mission is to strengthen Alberta's capacity to support and enhance mentoring. And when we say mentoring, we take a really broad definition of mentoring. So it doesn't have to be formal one-to-one mentoring. It's really about that, how do we support and put more healthy adults into kids' lives. I don't know if do you have anything to add there, Kim, Al, Andy?
No, you got that, that great definition.
Okay, so today we're really going to focus on that idea of team mentoring. So this could be team mentoring in schools. This could be outside of schools in other organizations, or when kids come together, like in Scouts or in 4-H or any of those kinds of youth organizations. So this was some research that was done a few years ago now through PolicyWise here in Edmonton, and the data was collected from Big Brothers Big Sisters. So they kind of looked at their results and divided it into emerging practices, promising practices, leading practices. So some of the ones, I'm going to let you look at this, but some of the ones I kind of wanted to just highlight was the piece around age difference. So what research shows, this one says 2 years, other research says 3 years age difference is really where you see the most impact. So it's not saying that same age mentoring is bad. It's just that when you get that age difference, the impact is stronger. So again, just thinking about that. The idea of using high school students. So, and actually team mentoring is one of the fastest growing forms of mentoring in, I think, the country in North America. So that idea of using high school students, schools are also using junior high students mentoring elementary. The idea of where possible, the individual mentee referral versus kind of that group mentoring. And we'll talk a little bit about class-to-class mentoring later. The idea of meeting in separate spaces, again, often in some of our settings, that's not possible, or sometimes the adults that are supervising this activity or supporting it are more comfortable with the mentors and mentees meeting with their individual, meeting individually, but in the same space. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The one-to-one ratio is, ideal, or it's proving to be ideal. Again, there are situations where sometimes that's not possible or not even beneficial. So I know of one mentoring initiative that was a grade 8 class working with, paired up with a grade 6 class. So a couple of things happened there. There were more grade 6 students than grade 8 students. So in some cases, there was one mentor to 2 mentees. When that happened, both parties were really, the adults at the elementary and at the junior high, were very intentional about how they set that up. There was also a little guy in the grade 6 class with autism, and really, he really struggled with change. So what they did to support him was they had 2 mentors for him, so that if one of them was away, the other one was there and it wasn't as disruptive. So, there's always those kind of exceptions to this. The idea of activities having a relationship focus, especially in the beginning, and then maybe moving to a balance of relationship-focused activities and maybe some more academic activities or other activities. Again, the leading practices, meeting weekly. An hour seems to be the length of time where we see the most impact. And again, the longer the match can continue, of course, the stronger the relationship. And the two other areas that are really critical when we think about team mentoring is that idea of ongoing monitoring. So I know in lots of cases, the supervising adult meets with those mentors weekly. They have a bit of a debrief. Sometimes they keep a journal. If questions have, arise, they come up in those weekly meetings. They'll talk about activities that worked well, maybe some that didn't work so well, do some of the planning for the next time they meet, but keeping that monitoring going. Often too, we'll talk a little bit about training, but often when you hear things that are arising in those meetings, it can give you an idea of maybe where do those mentors need more information, more training, and then the support piece. So again, that ongoing support, making sure that they know who they can come to if they have a question or if something's going on. So those monitoring and support really kind of work together. The monitoring is more kind of on the spot, maybe as well, like when you're in the room where they're meeting or wandering around to see what's happening. That's another piece of that, finding out what you may need to go back over or add or talk about later. Are there any questions about those? Okay. So that's from that Big Brothers Big Sisters study. There is quite a bit of other research out there. Michael Karcher seems to be one of the primary researchers in the area of team mentoring, and he's done he's written a lot about team mentoring and kind of keys to success, and some of those articles are in the team mentoring portal, which we'll look at later. But that idea of consistency, so keeping the same mentor over a period of time. And again, when mentors change, there tends to not be that kind of trust that they need. And also, it can have an impact on the mentee's self-esteem. And, I know a young lady, there's a young lady that I mentored through Big Brothers Big Sisters, and now we continue to see each other. It's not a formal match anymore. But she had a couple of mentoring situations, both kind of formal and informal, that didn't work out. And she really took a lot of that and held on to a lot of that about how it had something to do with her and the mentor didn't like her or she was too difficult or whatever that is. So that idea of inconsistency can have a negative impact. The other piece is that strong, stable bond based on trust, caring, and respect. I always think this is really interesting because, again, when we talk with our mentors about that idea of respect, it harkens for me back to that being in the classroom or being in a school, and we talk a lot about respect, but do we always define what that means? What does respect look like? What does it sound like? Because I think that for a lot of our youth and children, respect might look different in homes than what we would consider respect at school. So I think that's another conversation to have with our mentors around when we talk about treating your mentee with respect. What does that really mean? One of the other factors is that idea about planning for the end of that formal match well ahead of time, so there aren't any surprises. And again, depending on the situation, there may not be really an end, or maybe it's just that that relationship is going to look different. But making sure that everybody is kind of on the same page about that, before it actually comes to an end, and it's a big surprise for people. And that idea about a developmental approach as opposed to a goal or skill-focused curriculum. So there can still be goals and things you want to accomplish, but that idea that that the relationship needs to evolve before you can maybe start really getting into those things, really coming at it from allowing the mentee to have some say in what's happening. So really looking at not having something that is so written in stone and so lockstep that it's going to probably impede the relationship, and then it's not going to be successful. And then lastly, wherever possible, involving the teams in planning. So the example that I gave of that grade 8 class that was mentoring the grade 6s, part of what the grade 8s were doing in their class was to plan out the activities. So they would get together and talk about what activities they thought might work for their mentees or might be fun. And they planned that all out. And then the teacher kind of took a look at what they were doing. They would practice going through it with one of their peers in the class to get a sense of, is this going to take too long? Is this going to be too quick? So there was a lot of that planning, and it was really driven by the mentors, which the teacher said was such a great experience for them. And also it met a lot of curriculum objectives for those grade 8 students. So he was pretty happy about that as well. So those are some of what the research talks about around that idea of success and having a positive impact. And some of these things too don't have to be formal. Like I always think back to that whole idea of reading buddies that we sometimes have in elementaries or even in junior highs, where a grade 5 student goes and is paired up with grade 1 students and they read. And again, some of these tips can really enhance that relationship too, like the consistency, maybe having the same students together for the entire year. Building that bond, doing some relationship building activities before you just get into the reading part. Maybe having the reading buddies think about, if they don't get a chance to help choose books, maybe getting them to think about what is their reading buddy interested in? Are there books that they think that they might want to read with them? So just even in those more informal opportunities, how can we think about enhancing them so that the impact might be more noticeable? Any questions, comments? For some reason, I can't see oh, there we go. Can't see the chat, but.
Yeah, nothing in the chat box right now, but it brings
Okay.
to some of the reading programs that I've done in my schools where we almost let it be too informal. Having these factors that you've talked about success are ways that can improve that reading buddy type of program.
Yeah.
So thanks.
And while, while one of the factors is that idea about building those relationships, one of the other pieces that comes up for team mentoring in particular is having some structure. So while there might be some choice about activities, having some structure to what that's going to look like. Where are they going to meet? How long for? I know with some of when Alberta Ed was doing some corporate mentoring, so when some students from a school would come to 44 CAP, the Alberta Education Building, and were matched with people who worked for Alberta Ed and in the building, and Al was actually part of that. There was sort of a 20-minute, 20-minute, 20-minute breakdown. So those students came over the lunch hour. So the first 20 minutes was having lunch together and just chatting and that kind of relationship building piece. And then the next 20 minutes was reading, or sometimes the students would come with a math activity. And so the next 20 minutes was spent on that. And then the last 20 minutes was a game. So there were a whole bunch of games and art, craft things. And so the mentee and the mentor would choose what they wanted to do for that last 20 minutes. So again, some structure, although there's lots of choice within that structure. Outcomes, and again, I think most of us know these. And part of the reason why the funder was interested in funding team mentoring is because of the benefits to the mentors. And often we focus on the benefits to the mentee, but for this particular initiative, it's really also looking at what are the benefits for that team mentor. So the idea of increasing their connectedness to school. Often not only do you see the mentee's attendance improve, you see the mentor's attendance improve. That increased self-confidence and increased social skills. And then the mentees, similarly, and also seeing some improvement in academic performance and engagement. So benefits on both sides. And I think that idea of self-confidence and social skills for the mentor really speaks to me about who are our high school mentors. And really, and I think I've talked about this before, and some of you have probably heard me jump onto my little soapbox about sometimes it's our unlikely mentors who really can do a great job. And yes, you know what, our leadership students also can do a great job. But if we also can find opportunities to maybe approach some of those students that may not see themselves as a mentor, may not see themselves as a leader, and try and get them involved, often they can be the shining stars of mentoring. So enough of me talking. So Kim, do you want to start the activity?
Sure, we'll let you take a breath and have something to drink. So we thought it would be nice for you guys to hear from some of our partners, from Nadine and Andrea and Sandra, about kind of what's going on in their schools, kind of the expertise in the room. And then we're going to break you out into breakout rooms so that you guys can sit and share amongst yourself and build those relationships. So Nadine is here from Athabasca Mentoring. Andrea Dion just indicated that she's unfortunately not able to make it today. And Sandra is joining us from Wainwright High School. So we've just asked Nadine and Sandra to share, 3 to 5 minutes or however long. If it's only going to take 1 or 2 minutes, that's fine too, because they'll be joining our breakout rooms. But from their experience, what's their team mentoring story, some tips from success from their program. So Nadine, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So our team mentoring program had the unfortunate, the misfortune of starting the year before COVID, so it got shut down early. But our mentoring program has been around for 20 years with adult mentors, meeting once a week at either the grade 3 class or grade 4 class schools, and for 1 hour having lunch and doing an activity. So we kind of started the teen mentoring program with the same thing. We started with 7 grade 12 students, and they would meet once a week with their mentee. In grade 3, they were all matched with grade 3 students. Just the lunch hour at the school matched the high school lunch hour the best. So that's why we went with the grade 3 students. And it went really well. So we had all the grade 12 students meet on the same day. They all went on a Wednesday. They drove themselves. It's a fair distance between the 2 schools. So they usually carpooled. My daughter was one of them and had a 7-passenger vehicle. So she actually hauled the other mentors most of the time. We used most of the forms. So the teen permission form, the parent permission form, the media consent form. We used all of the forms from the Alberta Mentoring page. I love the Alberta Mentorship Program page. It has great resources. So we used all of the forms from there, changed them up to suit our program. We had the grade 12 students do a criminal record check. It was amazingly like a great success. I can't say enough about it. The principal of the school, she said it was just amazing to watch the grade 12 students with the mentees. The mentors themselves, like they had rave reviews about how it was like the best part of their week was one of the comments. They loved it. The interesting thing that I found was that out of the 7 mentors, the grade 12 students that applied, 3 of them had mentors when they were in grade 3 and 4. So I thought that was really cool that, half of them had mentors of their own and realized the importance of it. Some of the things, so we were shut down during the year of COVID, and we started back up this year, and we're in a temporary shutdown right now. Unfortunately, this year we've only had 2 high school mentors apply. I don't know why. I think just with COVID kind of putting the kibosh on everything, it wasn't as popular this year, but it just, I'm hoping that we can get back to some kind of normal, because it was, like I said, I just can't say enough good about it. And willing to answer any questions that anybody might have about our program.
Thanks for sharing that, Nadine. It's so great that you took your adult program and then just modeled your teen mentoring program after it, because you knew you had some successes there. For those of you that have questions, you can either throw it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask Nadine any questions. Well, Nadine, the group seems a little shy. Maybe when we go into some breakout rooms, we can. So I'd like to now turn it over to Sandra to share her experience.
Myself here. Love technology. Sorry. So I am a leadership teacher at Wainwright High School. I'm also the academic counselor here. We've done mentoring at our school probably for about similar to Nadine. We've done it for about 20 years, and we've done it in the scope of kids meeting with seniors in our community at the local residences. We've also partnered with our elementary students down the street from us. But after meeting Caroline and learning a bit about the Alberta Mentorship Partnership in more of a formal setting, we were excited to start a program within our school. And so we had met, I think, before COVID. That's right, Caroline. And it was, we really wanted to start with our reluctant learners and our reluctant kids in our schools. Fortunately, COVID happened, and so that didn't work for us. So this year we started with our grade 11 students meeting with our grade 7 students, probably similar in other parts of the province and the country, if not the world. We have a lot of kids that have missed probably about a year of school for in-class structured learning. And so they are developmentally probably behind where a typical grade 7 or 8 kid would be. So we had our grade 7s and 11s connect. I do lots of activities in our building. So we did lots of learning and activities for a couple weeks together. So we meet every Friday for 80 minutes. We started with activities just to see connections and just to see some relationships happening. And then I paired up the kids, and we meet every Friday. We divide it pretty formally into 20-minute time slots. We start with homework for 20 minutes. So we do, Waynard High School is a pretty small school. We're only 500, so, or 400. So a lot of the same teachers have taught my grade 11 students. And so they have a lot of the same styles of how they've learned, and they're able to share that information with our kids. So that part's been really good. So the homework piece went better than I thought it was going to go. Our grade 7s were eager to ask lots of questions of our grade 11s. Then we had 20 minutes of working through the booklet. I do lots with my leadership kids and developmental assets. We did some goal setting in the beginning with the kids. So what goals do they have in school? What goals did they have with their family? And then what goals did they want out of this mentorship program? Because I sort of felt that's important, because both parties need to kind of know what they're coming into and what they want to get out of it. And then we talk lots about who's in our community and who's in our sort of, who fills our bucket, who supports us, who's in our tree, I always use the activity, who sits at your table, those sorts of things. And then we spend about 20 minutes having a snack, whether they brought their lunches or I provided cookies and milk or something that was quite as inexpensive as I could make it. And yeah, and so we had 20 minutes of them sort of visiting. They could play a game. We had lots of board games. Our kids, our mentors were pretty vocal in what worked and what didn't work. I teach them every single day for 80 minutes. So on the Monday back, we would debrief and have conversations about what worked and what didn't work. I learned pretty quickly that they didn't want yes and no games. They wanted games to get to know their buddies. So a game like Jenga and taking each of the blocks and writing questions on them, they really liked that. So they could ask different kinds of questions and get to know the kids a bit better. And yeah, more like Monopoly games. I purchased lots of like Guess Who and just kind of one-on-one games, because initially we were going to have to do this virtually through Zoom. And but yeah, so we actually met in person. We have a big room that we facilitated it in. My vice principal supported me when we met, and so there's really the two of us in the room the entire time. We didn't have to go through the process of police checks and that sort of thing because they're grade 11 kids and we were with them the whole time. So that all worked well. We did inform both sets of, like, all the parents, of course, that they were meeting once a week. And because of COVID, of course, we were fully masked the whole time, except when the kids were eating. And then we had them eat kind of alongside each other instead of facing each other to try to prevent the spread of COVID. We did postpone our January meetings only because of Omicron. We're sitting with about 30% out of our buildings, so it's there's a lot of COVID in our school, like probably your schools. So we did postpone it for January, and then in February I'll start with a new group. I'll have my grade 10s partner with my grade 8s and probably do very similar activities. They'll be partnered for this semester. So yeah, that's kind of how we ran it, and we'll continue to hopefully run it if COVID would just disappear. So yeah, if you you have any questions, comments, I'm here to help. But I'm sure you guys all have lots of ideas you could share with me. I'd like that too. I've done this a long time, but I always think there's so much to learn from other people and other schools and other areas of the province. So
Thanks so much for sharing, Sandra. I love how you you took the input from your mentors and then incorporated that into some games. Any questions for Sandra before we go into some breakout rooms? Quiet group. I know we're all tired from our workday, and this is a little bit of a challenging time. But I'm so appreciative that you guys were able to come. So I've created some breakout rooms that will have 2 to 3 people per breakout room. We'll go into those rooms for about 12 minutes. Discuss your team mentoring story, any tips for success, or any questions you would like answered if you haven't started a program and you're thinking about starting a program. There's a few folks that joined us a little bit later than I started these breakout rooms, so we'll make sure that we get you in there as quickly as we can. Once we're done visiting and connecting and discussing our successes, then we'll come back to the main room, and then we'll recreate and join with some different partners so that you can connect with some different folks. So you'll have an opportunity to meet lots of people today. So welcome back.
Oh, there we go. Well, I hope everybody had some good conversations and some good sharing. So what we're going to do is hopefully you somehow stored some of those tips away, and we're just going to mix you up again. One of the pieces of feedback that we've been getting post webinar is around that idea of having time to connect. So we really wanted to honor that today. So we're going to pop you back into another set of breakout rooms, and hopefully we'll mix you up a little bit again. And then when you come back from this round of breakouts, then we'll have you pop some of the ideas that you heard, maybe some of your takeaways or questions that you have into the chat. So I think Kim is just being our tech whiz and getting you into round 2.
Okay, so I've got the rooms. If for whatever reason you'd like to get, you haven't had enough of a change up with the folks that are in your room, just pop back into this main room and I can reassign you to a different one. So again, we will go for about 12 minutes. Was that enough time? Just a thumbs up or thumbs down if you too long, too short? No, it's okay. Okay, so head out and connect. Welcome back. So we've got some of our folks have returned, most of our folks are back. Great. Well, welcome back. You guys had a great opportunity to share and connect. And just as kind of a wrap up to the expertise in the room activity that we've just done, you just wanted to take a minute to share in the chat box. What was 1 or 2 of your learnings from your connections? Just a quick little type in the chat box. Remember, we're going to save this chat box and then you'll get the recording. And while we do this, Caroline's going to get herself ready to share the Alberta Mentoring Partnership resources. Nadine made reference to a few of those resources, and we're just going to show you where to find them on our website. So keeping an open mind when working with youth. That's a great tip. Networking. Yes, Jen, it's always nice to talk to people who are in different contexts and try to figure out how that might work for our own context. Okay, well, folks are kind of pondering that. Caroline, why don't you share some of the resources we have?
So I'm just on for those of you that maybe haven't been to the AMP website, it's just albertamentors.ca. So this is just the homepage. And Andy has been working hard on the website, and Andy, it looks great. So this is sort of what it looks like. And up here along these tabs, I'm just going to take you to the resource section. So I just need to, I have all of your lovely faces blocking my little resource thing here, so I have to move you out of the way. So if we go to the mentoring in schools piece, and we'll come back to the collaborative community, but if we go here, oh, so there's,
I can
here
see
we go.
the PowerPoint.
Pardon?
Right now, all I'm seeing is the PowerPoint.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, I have to share my whole screen. Let me just try this again. Share screen. I knew that was going to happen.
I don't know about you guys, but I always think that, you know, this should get easier with time, but I still find myself.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Gotcha.
So the resource section, and then resources in schools. And so if we scroll down, the first one is this framework for building mentoring relationships in schools. So while this one is not specifically about teen mentoring, there is some information in there. So for example, on page 12 and 13 in this resource, I'm not going to open it up and go there, but there's talk about how do you build teen mentoring into school schedules, which is often a question that gets asked. There's also information in there on the career and technology studies classes. Those have been really difficult for schools to offer during COVID because of the actual mentoring component. And while some schools who have already got those mentoring relationships in place have been able to continue them virtually, it's really tough to start out that way. So hopefully we'll see an uptake again in those courses when face-to-face learning and being able to see other classes becomes doable again. So that's one resource. And in our May webinar, we're going to be talking about planning your program. And we'll look more into this resource then, because it's got lots of really great templates and checklists of things to think about when you're planning. And so, that's really the bulk of what it's about, but it does have some team mentoring in there. So, and the high school team mentoring has a handbook and a activity book, also available in French, and it really goes into, it's really written for the high school team mentors, and it kind of goes through what they would need to know about their role as a mentor, what they can expect from their mentee. So Sandra alluded to the developmental assets piece. There's some information in there about developmental assets to help the mentors think about that, and how can they help build those? How can they identify their own? How can they help build those in their mentees? There's also information in there about typical characteristics of children and youth at different ages. Again, to start having some conversations about what can you reasonably expect of your mentee. Also, to talk about maybe perhaps why your mentee may not be responding in a way that you think they should be or could be. So there's lots of information like that in that high school team mentoring handbook. And it also aligns with the outcomes in the CTS courses. So for schools that are offering those, working through that handbook with a student really covers off a lot of the objectives there. And I'm sure none of you would do this, but we don't recommend that you give them the book and then tell them to read it and then come back to it. So it's really a great guide to work through and have conversations and that kind of thing. So as I said, the people that come to these, I'm sure I don't need to say that, but I will anyway.
Caroline,
yeah.
Sorry, is this one of the resources that AMP had before COVID got printed? So we have a bunch of physical copies of this?
Yes, there are boxes of hard copies in the basement of BGC Biggs Riverdale office. That's so the other thing. Yeah, thank you for reminding me, Kim. So they are downloadable, but there's also hard copies. So if for whatever reason it is difficult or cost prohibitive to copy them all yourself, you can send AMP an email and we will get them to you. We, meaning not me, but probably Al or Kim or Andy.
I like that, the royal we. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I'm only about 5 minutes away, so I'd be happy to go down there into the basement and definitely send them out, because yeah, printing costs, we understand that everybody can't just print a bunch of them, so happy to do that.
Thank you, Al. And then the activity book just has ideas for activities, and a lot of them, not a lot of them, some of them are kind of worksheety. But what a lot of the teams have done is looked at that activity and then created something that's more hands-on or more active, but it's given them an idea to start with. So that's sort of what the activity book is about. A lot of the activities in there kind of focus on the idea of career exploration. And part of that is because these particular resources were originally a joint project between education and advanced ed. So there is that slant to it. So, it may be great for some, it may not be great for others. Often what we hear is that teachers actually like it because not only is it kind of exploring the mentee's interests, but the mentors also start to think about their interests and maybe what they want to pursue or where they want to go. And again, you can balance those activities with others for sure. Not at all prescriptive, it's just to give some ideas. And the last one I wanted to focus on was, and I think I missed it. I think I have to go back to resources and hit the team mentoring toolkit. So this one looks a bit different because it initially was a project between AMP and the Society for Safe and Caring Schools. So it used to be housed on the Safe and Caring Schools website, but they no longer exist. So AMP has sort of taken it over. And the disclaimer is it needs some updating, but there are still some really great kind of features. And I always talk about this as being the DIY of team mentoring. And I think Nadine referenced some of the forms that are in here. So it has kind of two components to it. So it's got sections on all these different topics, and the information in there is really well aligned with the research, the findings that we talked about earlier. So there's lots of information and ideas that really reflect that research. So they've got some really, the monitoring and support sections, got some really great ideas about what you can do around that piece, and also ideas like there's a template for a journal for the mentors to keep, lots of different ideas in the match, meeting, and activity piece about how you can do that. Even in the matching, some ideas about how you might want to think about matching your mentors and your mentees. So lots of ideas in there, even there around recruitment and screening and selection. So there are, like I said, there's a template for the team mentoring journal. There's permission forms, like an application form, if you want to have your mentors fill out a more formal application. There's questions in there for interviewing. There's all of those elements in this one resource. And it's, again, downloadable. And then all of these tools that are in here are in Word, so you can make them fit your particular initiative. So you can go in there and edit and make changes and adapt or whatever you would like to do with all of those tools. So again, there's the planning tools, there's tools around recruiting, the screening and selection piece, permission forms. There's even mentee interview questions. There's information in there on the training. So again, AMP has an online mentor kind of orientation training that is at no cost that you can just go to on the website. I know that if you have like a whole class that you want to do that with, if you get a hold of Andy, he can make that really user-friendly for you. Again, with that training, something that I found really effective is to have this, all the mentors that you're training together, but all on their individual devices so that they can get the certificate at the end, and then work through it with them. So you can stop, you can go into more detail, you can start again. It's designed so that you can stop and then come back to it later, and it just, you know, you pick up where you left off, so you don't have to do it all at once with your mentors, which is a really great feature. And again, I found that was really good, especially if we had mentors where English wasn't their first language and they might need a little bit more explanation about some of the points or the topics. And then there's also the mentee training. So similarly, there's online training for mentees. So, and more of the monitoring and support things. I should be watching the time here. So again, all of these tools are downloadable from the Toolkit and the website. And then just quickly, I wanted to try and get in here. So this is where the information about these webinars and the portal is housed. So it is again under mentoring in schools. The dates are here. The sign up is there if you know people who haven't signed up. There's a list of the different webinars that are coming up. So we have an intergenerational mentoring kind of standalone one in February, and then a planning your mentoring initiative one in May, in addition to the cohort group. And then in here is the portal. So let's see. Oh, I don't even, Andy might need to help me here. I'm probably not going to remember what my password is. Oh, no. It's always the pressure. I can never remember under pressure. Oh, anyway, I don't know if Andy, if you can get in there.
1 second here. I'll try to.
Yeah. Anyway, if you're new to it, you can just email the email address here and get in and sign up. And then when you're in there, here, I'll stop sharing. And then when you're into that area, there is a section on resources. So we put some of the teen mentoring research articles that we talked about earlier are in the portal. So it's a place where you can go and see that information. There's little discussion sections in there. There's a place where you can sign in and kind of introduce yourself and see who else is in there. So that's one of the places on the website that is more specifically around this teen mentoring. So
Caroline, did you want, we could spend a couple of minutes having folks fill out our survey. And if you
Yeah.
wanted to try again and see if you could get into the portal, so you
Yeah.
have no pressure, we could do that. So typically what we do is we ask for your feedback. And the feedback from our previous cohort session in November actually led us to this topic today, which were, tips for success. What are people actually seeing in the field? And there was lots of about just wanting more time to connect so that you guys could share and have a connector outside of this group. So if you just take a few minutes to fill out this survey, I'll stick
Did we lose Kim? Oh no, she's there.
Sorry, I was having some problems with my mute. I put the link in the chat. And what I was saying when I was completely muted was that we used the input from the last survey in November to create our session for today. So folks said that they wanted to have tips, they wanted to connect and share. And so that's how we create our webinars for you. So before you leave today, Caroline's going to try to show us the portal if she can remember her password. But then we also have a few other webinars that you might be interested in.
I'm in.
Okay. If you didn't get a chance to completely fill out your survey, Shannon will be sending out the recording, the chat box summary, and the survey link once again.
So just quickly in that portal under dashboard, then you can go and see all the different sections. So there's the introduction piece. There's some discussion forums that you can get into and start. There's the CTS course information here. Latoya Bartlett, who used to work up in Fort Vermilion area and now is down in southern Alberta. She was really generous in sharing a lot of the information that she used to teach her CTS courses. So there's all kinds of planning examples and other tools and tricks that she's shared that are on here. If you've got any great ideas, you can submit them and we can post them up. A number of years ago now, we brought teachers together and did a review of some of the high school team mentoring resources. And in there, they talked about what they found really useful and how they used it. So that might be of interest to you as well. As well as one of the things that people were interested in was looking at more ideas and activities around that relationship building piece. So there's a place there for people to put their ideas, find some new ones. And then down here is where I just wanted to show you some of these resources. So there's 3 here that are specific to the team mentoring. So just something for you to know. And if you want to go in there, sign up and get in there and take a look at them. There's some really good information in there. So that is that part of the portal.
For those of you that might not know, January is Mentor Month, and AMP has been highlighting a bunch of different themes over the month of January. Some upcoming webinars that you might be interested in, or your colleagues might be interested in, is this Friday from 12 to 1, so a lunch and learn. We're doing a session on male mentoring. On the 28th, mentors are everywhere from 4 to 5. And then in some of our evaluations, some folks have said that they're really interested in how do I evaluate my program and what are those next steps. So if you go into the AMP website, under resources, you will see e-eval, and these are these pre-evaluation webinar series. There are some that have already happened, but they're recorded, so you can go into the portal and take a look at them. If you complete all 8 of them, you receive a certificate of completion. But you don't have to do all 8. You can pick and choose the one. I believe that there's one coming up in February, evaluating within your means. And so depending on where you're at with your program, you might find that information useful. I think Caroline already talked quickly about our next steps. Our next provincial webinar for this cohort is in April from 4 to 5:30. And then we're going to have a wrap-up cohort. We're hoping to be in person for May and June. And then we've got the 2 standalone webinars. So one's on intergenerational mentoring, and in May, planning your mentoring initiative. If you wanted to start that thinking for the following school year. And that is what we have for you today. I see that we're 2 minutes over, and I apologize, but I think there were some rich conversations that happened in our breakout rooms, and so I didn't really want to shorten that piece. If you can type into the chat box, what is your one takeaway from today's webinar? We'll have that listed and we'll send it out to you. Again, thank you for joining us. There's our contact information if you need that for any physical copies or just any questions that you have in general. Thank you all for joining us tonight.